Hello and welcome back. In this video, we're going to talk about functions, which are very powerful and fundamental. We've actually already used some built-in functions of Python like range to make a list of all integers between two numbers, or len to get a length of a list. Now we're going to learn how we can build our own functions. By definition, a function is a block of organized reusable code that is used to perform a single related action. Functions are used to modularize a code and make the code more reusable. So generally speaking, a function is like a machine built out of code that does a certain thing or performs a certain algorithm. Usually the functions get an input and do something with that input and give out an output, much like a machine. A function can also be just a process and not require any input or give out any output. In Python, a function with input looks like this. It's just a function name and the inputs in a parentheses. A function without inputs looks the same, but just with empty parentheses. Now, the way you can make a function in Python is like this. You just type def and then specify the function name followed with parentheses with the input variables in them and a double point. After that, you shift in a tab and specify what this function should do. If the function is not supposed to get any inputs, you just leave the parentheses empty. If your function is supposed to give out any output at any point, you can just do that by using the return keyword followed by what you want to return. Now remember that a return statement breaks the function process and any statements after that will not be done. Now let's head over to PyCharm and make some functions on our own in live code. Alright, so I'm in PyCharm and what I want to do is to show you how the functions in Python work in 3 examples, right? First up, I want to do an example with a function that doesn't require any input and doesn't return any output. And I'm going to make it as easy as possible. So let's write down the function. We've said that we say def and let the function's name be name, and it doesn't require any input, and what it does is just that it prints out my name. All right, algorithmy. Okay, so it just prints out algorithmy. That's all it does. Instead of saying print algorithmy, we can now say name, right, with the parentheses. All right, and you can see if I give it a run, nothing will happen because this is just a function declaration. We haven't used the function, we haven't called the function. So the program actually starts right after the declaration of the function, which is right here. Right, I'm going to leave that line free and I'm going to move on to the next line and I'm going to just call that function, right? For calling it, it's just you type in its name, right? With the parentheses. And there you go. It now works. It calls that function, and what that function does is that it prints out algorithmy. So whenever in the further code and the further lines, whenever I say name, parentheses, it will just print out algorithmy. All right? So that's a very easy example, but it's actually nothing that you will ever use. All right? So next up, let's make a function that gets an input but doesn't return any output. Right? For that, let's say that we have a function named swap. Right? And what it does is that it gets a list and a first number and a second number, right? And what this function should do is that it just gets a list, a first and a second number, right? And what it does is that it swaps the numbers or the values of the list, right, at the place of first and second, right? So we just say temp is equal to, it's an easy algorithm. We just store the list at the place of first in a temporary variable, and then we say list at first must be equal to list at second, right? And then we say list at second must become equal to temp, right? And we're done. So we have swapped the 2 elements in the list, right? To use that, let's make a list, right? I'm going to name it li and let that be equal to a list. And let's put some things in it. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and 7 and 8, for example. right? And what I want to do is that I want to swap and list, right, the elements to the second element, which is in here number 3, right? This is element 0, element 1, element 2, right? 0, 1, 2. So the second element is number 3. And the last one, right? The 7th. So 3 must then go here and 8 must go here, right? So let's see if it works. For that, let's print out the list right after we do it, right? So let's give it a run. And as you can see, 8 is here and 3 is there after this swap, right? After we have swapped the second and the 7th element, or the elements number 2 and 7, which are actually 3rd and 8th elements. All right? All right, so that's it for this example. Next up, let's do another function that gets a number and calculates the factorial of that number, right? By definition, the factorial of a number is just the multiplication of all the numbers from 1 to that number, right? So let's call it fact for factorial, and it should get a number. Let's say that's n, all right? And what it should do is that it just should set I equal to 1, right? We've said it's just a multiplication of all those numbers, right? And it should just go ahead and say for x, for example, in range of 1 and n plus 1, right? So to n, right? What it should do is just that it should set I equal to I times x, right? So we're just multiplying all the numbers there. Okay? So first up we say I times 1, it says 1 times 1, it's 1, and so on, right? And at the end, it should just return I, right? So let's use this function in action. Let's see if it works. Let's say we know that the factorial of 3 is, for example, 6. It's 1 times 2 times 3, that's 6, right? So let's see if it works. Let's say print the factorial of 3, right? Let's give it a run. And there you go. It says 6. The factorial of 5. 120. Factorial of 500. And there you go. That's a big number, right? Never ends. A big number. Okay. So that's it for this video. We've seen all the different kinds of function definitions. And in the next video, we're going to do an example and you're going to understand better how the functions work. And we're going to use them in action to solve problems. So give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it and subscribe to the channel for further videos. I'll see you in the next one.